What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to dive into the New York Giants offense. I've talked a lot about this roster. I've talked about the defense specifically. I've talked about the offensive line as a whole. And now I'm going to talk about Daniel Jones and this offense. And in my opinion, the 5 things that must happen for the New York Giants offense to take a big step up in 2021. And if it does not, I think we all agree that the New York Giants will have a disappointing season. The Giants did everything in their power to try to rebuff this offense this past offseason, and it's been a problem with the Giants for a long time, and there's several reasons as to why that may be. Some may point over the last 8 or 9 years, which it's really been dreadful. The offense, really since our last Super Bowl in 2012, we have not had any progress with this offense outside of 1 year in 2015 where Eli Manning actually had a great statistical year, and of course that year the defense couldn't really get anything going, and then it was kind of the opposite the next year, and we spent big on the defense. The defense was great. The offense, even though we went on 11-5, left a lot to be desired. But this offense really has not gotten going for quite some time, and even in 2015, it wasn't really a great unit. It was more so that we had big playmakers that were able to, hide some of our deficiencies, which may be the case this year with some of these guys that we brought in as this offensive line continues to gel. But there's a lot of factors as to why that may be. One, the constant coaching changes, whether it be the head coach, whether it be some of the coaches underneath, new offensive coordinators, so on and so forth. The lack of playmakers, especially in recent years, health, and of course the point that we always go back to, the offensive line, which has been beyond dreadful for the Giants really over the last 10 years. And some of that has to do with talent, some of that has to do with the lack of continuity and constant turnover. On this roster, the offensive line more so than anything else needs that. It needs familiarity. So I think those are the major reasons as to why this offense has struggled. And in recent history, the New York Giants, I think going back to 2012, have only drafted one defensive player with their first pick in the first round. I always say 2019, we took 2 defensive players in the first round, but Jones was our first pick. So since 2012 or 13, we've only drafted one defensive player, and that was Eli Apple, with our first pick in the first round. So we've done everything in our power in terms of drafting offensive players to try to get this team to work, right? You go back to Odell Beckham, Evan Ingram, Eric Flowers, and now during Dave Gettleman's tenure, the first-round picks have been Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley the year before that, who's supposed to be a major playmaker. Andrew Thomas is supposed to be his blindside protector, and now they draft Kadarius Toney, who I'm sure the Giants are hoping could be a wide receiver 1 in the near future for this football team. In addition to that, the New York Giants went out there and spent like lunatics in free agency. Their biggest acquisition was Kenny Golladay, who will instantly become Daniel Jones's best weapon that he's ever thrown to in the passing game. And with Saquon Barkley back, you have to hope that this offense could take a step up. And if it does, we could surprise a lot of people this year. Like I said yesterday in my video, I think a lot of people right now are doubting Daniel Jones. I think a lot of people don't seem to think that Daniel Jones could get the job done. And a perfect example for me to really hit home with that is you look at the Arizona Cardinals last year. Where were the holes? I mean, taking away the quarterback, Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones, the experts had the Arizona Cardinals as a Super Bowl sleeper, a team that many thought were going to the playoffs. Well, if you look at that Arizona Cardinals roster outside of the quarterback, who of course many people had very high hopes for with Kyler Murray, their defense was nowhere near what this New York Giants defense should be going into this year. And their offensive line going into last year, many thought could be the worst offensive line in the league. So they had a lot of holes on that team, but I think they had a lot of faith in Kyler Murray. I think with Daniel Jones, the experts and the pundits don't think, even with the help that he's gotten, that Daniel Jones will take a big step up in 2021. Well, in this video, we're going to talk about the 5 things that need to happen for Jones and the offense as a whole to really get things going and get this team going in the right direction. And the first and biggest thing for me, for this New York Giants offense and Jones to get big, take a big step up this year, is overall health on the offensive unit, right? Last year, Saquon Barkley went down 1 game in. He's now had 2 injuries 2 years in a row. This past year, of course, was a much more serious injury with the torn ACL. We don't know how he's going to respond off the injury, and we're going to have to wait and see. By all accounts, he looks like he's progressing very well, and the Giants seem to think they'll have him for opening day. Whether or not he'll be able to get a full allotment of touches early on in the year, that remains to be seen. But he needs to remain healthy, and Daniel Jones as well. Jones has missed time the last 2 years. He missed 2 games last year, 2 games the year before that. And last year, even in some of the games he played down the stretch, he clearly wasn't himself, didn't have the same mobility after he suffered that injury, and I think the New York Giants rushed him back. And, of course, Kenny Golladay. Golladay only played 5 games last year, even though it was not in a New York Giants uniform. We also have guys like Shepard and Ingram who have had injury history. Shepard, of course, with the concussions. Ingram last year was really the only year in which he stayed healthy throughout the entirety of his career. So I think overall health to these weapons that the New York Giants have brought in or are bringing back need to stay relatively healthy. Of course, you're always going to have injuries. Football's a contact sport, but the main pieces need to stay healthy. When Saquon Barkley is in this lineup, the offense hits another gear. I've said it countless times. All you got to do is look at Daniel Jones' numbers with Saquon, without him. 23 touchdowns, 8 picks with him. 12 touchdowns, 14 picks without him, even though he's had 7 more starts in the NFL without Saquon Barkley. We need Barkley in the lineup. He presents a difficult task for opposing defenses. They have to game plan for him, and it'll open up the playbook. The same can be said for Golladay. That should help Saquon. They need to stay healthy, and if they do, I absolutely think this New York Giants offense could take a big leap forward this year. The second biggest thing to me is the progression of the offensive line, and I made a video on this, so I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I think this is obvious, a major reason as to why this offense could take a big step forward. And they didn't add anybody outside of Fulton, who was not very good last year. They do have young players that you hope will progress, and you have to hope continuity playing another year together and help around them on the offense with the weapons that they're getting back and that they added will make this offense less predictable. Defenses won't be able to blitz as much as they did last year, and it'll make their job easier, and in turn will make that offensive line better and overall blocking better. The addition of Kyle Rudolph could also help in terms of blocking, and we'll see how the New York Giants operate this year. Of course, also got a separator in Kadarius Toney, which should allow Daniel Jones to get quick hitters if the offensive line does break down. But we'll see. And then that takes me to step number 3. That is Jason Garrett and the overall play calling for the New York Giants. Of course, the Giants have made some changes to the coaching staff. They've promoted several people from within, and it seems like this year, Joe Judge is going to have a more hands-on approach with this offense. And he's going to put his spin on things. Of course, Garrett is still going to call the plays. Joe Judge, we all know, is a CEO. He's not a guy that wants to call the plays. He's a guy that wants to be the head coach and put his trust in the coaches below him. But he promoted Freddie Kitchens. Like I said, we brought in other people from outside the organization, and I do think they'll be more innovative this year. Now, the offensive line is going to have a lot to do with that, right? Because it's hard to call for deep passes and get, more aggressive with your offense if you don't have trust in the guys blocking up front. So that's going to have a lot to do with it. But Jason Garrett has to open up the playbook, and he has to allow Daniel Jones to be able to create big plays down the field for this New York Giants football team. We cannot be a vanilla offense. We cannot be a team that throws six-yard curl routes all the way down the field. You go back, you look at our touchdown scores last year in terms of the drives. A lot of our drives took 10, 12, 13 plays. We had to be perfect on those drives because we didn't have the innovation in the offense that could create big plays for this football team. And you have to hope with the weapons that we've added and gotten back, that should help assist in that. The fourth biggest the fourth biggest thing, and we're going to get to Daniel Jones, of course, that's going to be number 5, his maturation in this offense. But the fourth biggest thing for me for the New York Giants this year, and if this offense is going to improve, is big plays. Last year, Daniel Jones and the New York Giants ranked in the bottom third in the league in both passing plays over 20 yards and passing plays over 40 yards. We were unable to create quick hitters for this offense. And kind of like I said in 2015, even though we were not even close to having a great overall offense, the fact that we were able to create big plays because we had playmakers kind of, hid a lot of the deficiencies in our offense. We had the ability of a guy like Odell Beckham to take it to the house. Also, I kind of want to couple with that red zone efficiency, but I think they kind of go hand in hand. Having more playmakers on the outside should assist in both areas. Kenny Golladay, like I've said countless times, averaged 19 yards a catch 2 years ago. That should help with big plays. Saquon Barkley may be the most dynamic running back in the NFL. Having him back in the lineup should help with big plays. You add a speedster with Kadarius Toney. The same could be said for John Ross. And a lesser role for guys like Slayton and Shepard should help assist in that. But I think the Giants need to have quicker, you need to be able to beat teams both ways. It's great to be able to grind out the clock and win the time of possession. I think we still need to look to do that against specific teams, but I think you also need to have the ability to score quick in this league. That's the type of league it's become. And I think the New York Giants at least need to have that ability. And I think this year they will with the playmakers that they brought in to be able to create bigger plays down the field. Last year, Daniel Jones only had 5 passing plays of 40 yards or more, one of which came in week 1 with Darius Slayton on that touchdown. So I think that's another thing that really needs to improve this year for this New York Giants offense to take a major leap. And then the final thing is obvious, and that's Daniel Jones's growth and progression as a quarterback in the NFL. Second year in the system, no excuses there. Should have familiarity in terms of what Garrett is trying to do with this football team. He's got weapons all around him. No excuses there. He's got to get better with his pocket awareness, and he's got to get better in terms of just becoming a smarter quarterback in the NFL. I think there were things that last year that you saw progression over the course of the year in terms of, him holding on to the football when he took sacks. Things like that. Didn't turn the football over nearly as much. I think he only threw 10 picks last year in 2 more starts. He threw 12 picks in 2 less starts the year before that, and he had 6 lost fumbles as opposed to, I think, 9, even though he had 2 more starts this past year. And we all know a lot of those lost fumbles weren't even on Daniel Jones. So I think there were signs of progression last year, but he needs to take a big step up. He needs to put points on the board. And with everything else, it's why I ranked it 5th, because in my opinion, if these other things come into place, it's going to make his job a lot easier. Yes, of course, the quarterback is the most important position in an offense and the growth of this offense overall, but a quarterback also needs help around him to be able to get the job done. So my thought process is, if we stay healthy, the playmakers stay healthy, Saquon Barkley, Kenny Golladay, if the offensive line matures and gets better, if Jason Garrett becomes more innovative and opens up the playbook, in the end, it will make Daniel Jones the quarterback that we need him to be able to put more points on the board. Last year, this Giants offense, I think, averaged 17 points a game, and a lot of that was created by defense. You go back, you think about it, we had a couple of defensive touchdowns. We got short field position on a lot of the touchdowns that we scored, and I do think this defense is going to create more turnovers this year, but it's got to get a lot better. I mean, when you look at our offense last year, the New York Giants ranked 31st in yards, 31st in points, 31st in passing touchdowns with 12, 19th in rushing yards, and 20th in turnovers. All those numbers must get better in 2021 if the Giants are going to compete and really have an opportunity to do some damage in the playoffs. Do I think it could be done? Absolutely. But they'll need these 5 things to take place if you want it that way. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.